Well guys, this is it. The final chapter is upon us, and as a result, it's now up to us to finally defeat Bowser with the glorious Star Rod, and hopefully we can rescue not only Princess Peach, but the entire Mushroom Kingdom as well. Greetings ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Mexi here once again, and I am back for the likes of the Mexi Toys videos as you probably expect at this point in time. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Paper Mario, aka for those of you who live in Japan, Mario Story for the Nintendo 64. So, last time, we somehow managed to actually try to find some missing badges, specifically in Chapter 6 most likely, because I didn't pay attention to the forms of the surroundings that much, and in addition to that, speaking of the forms of those badges, is that along the way we also did manage to farm some more coins, all thanks to the forms of without a doubt is the most luck-based minigame in the entire game, which appears to be Jump Attack, and relatively speaking I was about the fact that it only took me for about let's just say a couple of attempts to actually try to do it successfully, because we already know for a fact how much frustration I have with that particular minigame. Although as far as minigames are concerned, they're most likely filler, and as a matter of fact I was about the fact that we did somehow experience the majority of the jump attack a lot, and meanwhile when it comes to hammer attack though, we only play it once, and as I mentioned this before, I'm pretty much stuck at it, mainly because I wasn't fast enough, or perhaps even maybe because this game runs at 50Hz mode, which I was not expecting to be that slow. And also, in addition to that, we also did manage to find the last batch of those star pieces, and relatively speaking, I was about the fact that after all, we finally gathered every single star pieces in the whole game. And as far as badges are concerned, we are technically down to one left, and as a result, speaking of which that was about the fact I'm pretty sure the final badge is going to be at the final chapter in the game, so as a result though we can pretty much guaranteed able to try to find that. And speaking of the final chapter, is about the fact that today for this video, is that we are about to be making our way to the final chapter in the game. Well, I won't classify for saying for the fact that we're about to be going into the final chapter for about 90% progress, because as far as the remaining 10% as far as I'm concerned, well, like I said before, we will be back onto the forms of Toad Town during at some point later on, especially because not only we can able to actually make things possible for us to able to actually guarantee to reach our final level up, which appears to be level 27, but in addition to that though is about the fact that we can also able to actually check out the remaining enemies that we've never actually come across into yet. So either way, because chances are though is about the fact that as far as battling as far as I'm concerned, we are essentially almost done here. So because of that, onwards to ourselves into the final world in the game, or should I say the final chapter, which is going to take place in not only in Bowser's castle, but in addition to Princess Peach's castle as well, all combined into one particular location. So here we go, Chapter 8, a star-powered showdown. And there's only one main threat, and that's of course Bowser himself, or Koopa if you live in Japan. So, yeah, as you can tell, there's no star spirits to obtain, because as you probably would expect, that we've already rescued every single star spirit in the game. So, yeah, it's only a matter of time about the fact that we need to make our way to the final battle, and so much to the point, it might take a bit while to get to this point, especially because, as you can tell, that we're able to actually come across into a save block for starters, and as you can tell, for the fact that, as you can see, there's the final badge right there, right where the forms of that particular red block was. So, if you're probably wondering, how'd you get there exactly? Well, we're trying to figure something out once we're able to actually start exploring this place, and so much to the point, this is where the difficulty starts to ramp up tremendously, although ultimately though is about the fact that this place will be a piece of cake to me, especially it's a good thing we did manage to grind as many of those level ups as we could, usually for level 26 to start things off, so as a result, hopefully we can able to get a better chance to actually deal with some battles a lot easier. So because of that, all thanks to the forms of, you know, maximum amount of HP, and in addition to badge points, and so much to the point, we've actually got enough flower points to able to actually use some special techniques here and there. So, like, you know, Mega Jump, and in addition to the forms of Power Bounce and Multi-Bounce especially, and even especially noticeable with the Supercharged Jump as well, for the sake of the forms to try to able to increase our attack power until later on. So because of that, However, though, I'm also able to attempt to use the super jump charge until for later, so just in case we can able to actually try to save it up once we make our way to the grand finale, basically. So just in case it will make the entire battle a lot more easier than said than done. So anyway, as you can see, we somehow come across into ourselves the first batch of enemies that we might able to encounter in Chapter 8, and that's what it appears to be for the fact that we're about to be faced off against with Koopa Troll. Koopa Troll does have 8 HP, and attack power was obviously 4, and defense power was 3. So no matter what though, you can technically try to able to come across into those enemies earlier on, thanks to the forms of one of those epilogues from the likes of in Chapter 3. Like, if you have a conversation with Bowser as Peach, and no matter what though, he does manage to offer us 3 different options when it comes to more accurately if you proceed into Chapter 4, more specifically in Shy Guy's Toy Box, where basically though, if you do manage to able to select that particular Koopa Troll, he will miraculously appear in Chapter 4, assuming of course no matter what though, if you accidentally choose the other option, which appears to be something more likely like a healing item, for instance. So yeah, chances are though is about the fact that we somehow managed able to face off against with Koopa Trolls in the end game anyway, so just so I'm sure it'll be a lot more fitting. Well, as long as you were able to actually access to other star points early on throughout the majority of Chapter 4 if you managed to go for that option. But ultimately though, I didn't go for that option. So, oh well, no big deal though, especially because no matter what though, as you probably can tell, that since we are still on level 26 up to this point, this means about the fact that every time whenever we do manage to defeat some enemies, mainly for instance with the forms of Koopa Troll, basically though, every time whenever we do manage to finish them off, we don't able to actually claim our star points, because the only option is left in terms of obtaining some more star points is by going through some more boss battles coming up, and in addition to some enemy encounters later on, and especially notable with the honorable mentions, if you really want to go back into Chapter 6 again, to able to actually fight against with Amazing Daisies again, if you want to go for that. But ultimately though, that like I said before, we are essentially done when it comes to grinding for more star points, all thanks to the forms of Amazing Daisies, of course. So, oh, speaking of such, there's another enemy right there, which might look a bit familiar to you, knows what appears to be none other than Hammer Bros. So no matter what though, we'll bring out Goom Mario again, so we can able to actually do some more tunneling and stuff like that. So yeah, as far as Hammer Bros, as far as I'm aware, those guys are going to be pretty tough to deal with, which, as you can see, they do have 12 HP, and attack power is 5, and defense power was 1. So, I believe that's also another one of those enemies you can technically come across into early on, for the likes of in Chapter 4, which is basically pretty much the similar situation as the forms of Koopa Troll, although, relatively speaking, I was about the fact that, like I said before, that I didn't do it that way, just because I always attempt to make sure that I want to make things a little bit more safer, rather than just trying to deal with the forms of some tougher enemies later on. But ultimately, though, about the fact that, as you can tell, that we are, you know, getting very close, you know? So anyway, every time whenever we do manage to able to get hit by a hammer, as you can tell, we immediately become tiny, which this means about the fact that our attack power has been decreasing, so this means we only have to do with like 1 unit of damage, and so much to the point for the fact that we're going to be shrunk for about let's say 2 or 3 turns. So relatively speaking though, thankfully though, thanks to the forms of the power bounce ability, we should able to actually do some bit of damage, and as you can see, since we did somehow manage able to defeat the Hammer Bros, if you couldn't tell, that way we get ourselves only 2 star points. Well, ultimately though, every time whenever we do manage to defeat one, obviously though, we able to actually get 1 star point each when it comes to that particular defeat of that Hammer Bro. So, oh yeah, every once in a while though is about the fact that we come across this large Bowser door, which prevents us about the fact that we can able to try to progress. But ultimately though, about the fact that if we do manage to able to get onto that specific spot, almost right near to where the Bowser door is, so no matter what though, as you can see, there's actually not 1 but 3 blocks, as you can see, but we can't do anything for that at the moment, because as you can tell, we have to stand on that specific spot right there, and yes, I'm also able to go through, thank you very much. But it's a trap. So this means about the fact that we have to force ourselves to go all the way down, and so much to the point, luckily there's a healing block right there. So that will be a perfect opportunity to able to actually heal ourselves, especially because after dealing with the forms of Coup Patrol, as well as the Hammer Bros especially, which deals so much damage so far, especially that we somehow got shrunk for about twice so far. So anyway, a few things I want to talk about this is though, and that's what appears to be for the fact that, well, today's day of course there is the dun unlucky 13th day, which means today's the day is the forms of the, well, Friday the 13th of June of 2025 today. So no matter what though, luckily though, I've never actually come across into any bad luck situations here and there today. Well, apart from the fact that sometimes though about the fact that I managed able to once again come across into some technical issues with my microphone again, which it's not that big of a deal because it's already been sorted again. So yeah, that's besides the point. So anyway, there are some interesting stuff I would like to discuss upon something. That's what appears to be for the fact that I'm generally surprised I forgot to mention about, ever since enduring the forms have been the, well, let's just say yesterday or something like that. Basically though, there was that particular game on the Xbox Game Showcase presentation. There was actually a new game has been revealed, and that's what appears to be Super Meat Boy 3D, which I've noticed about the fact that it feels remarkably similar to Super Meat Boy, but this time in 3D. And also, during the events of that particular trailer, that honestly caught me off guard at first, because at one hand, they show ourselves a very similar clip as the forms of Super Mario 64's opening sequence when you start the game off, of course, where basically though, out of nowhere, that warp pipe showed up, and as a result, I'm like, wait a second, is that supposed to be kind of similar situation as in Super Mario 64's opening sequence? Only this time you're able to actually see the Meat Boy himself, and no matter what though, it does look pretty promising, all things considered. Although I'm not entirely sure what the release date is going to be at exactly, because I didn't pay attention to the forms of the release dates as much, because, well, relatively speaking though actually, there are some interesting news in terms of the forms of Splatoon recently. Not only does it brings us into ourselves the new version update specifically for Splatoon 3, but in addition to that, the next Splatoon game is going to be on its way exclusively for the Nintendo Switch 2. Now you guys are probably thinking that, is it going to be Splatoon 4? Not exactly, because you do realize, similar to the forms of how it does it back then, when usually back in 2013, when Pikmin 3 did somehow first came out on the Wii U, but eventually until 4 years later, there's the only Pikmin spin-off game that did manage to appear on the 3DS, which eventually became Hey Pikmin, until in 2017 that is. But then, until likely for 6 years later, then, you know, Nintendo finally brings us, you know, Pikmin 4 onto Nintendo Switch. And so much to the point about the fact that you do realize about the fact it's been almost 3 years ago since when Splatoon 3 did somehow first came out on Nintendo Switch. Well, conveniently enough, there's actually a spin-off Splatoon game is going to be on its way onto exclusively for Nintendo Switch 2. And I'm very curious to know how that's going to play out, especially that despite the fact that the actual release date has not been confirmed yet, but it's currently in development, at least as far as I do notice. So either way, so as you can see right there, every time whenever we do manage to catch a ride with Lucky Luster, basically though, every time whenever we do manage to go across for the lava, basically though, his clouds is actually going to be in agony pain, especially because no wonder why, the lava itself is super ridiculously hard. And also, trying to go into transparent mode right there as Bo, because otherwise, if you dare touch the falls that particular lava, fall right there, then obviously though you get burned and you have to restart that particular platforming segment again. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of times though about the fact that we have to do all sorts of stuff into this place, like ranging from puzzles, obstacles, and etc, etc. So yeah, that's as far as I can try to able to describe it by. I mean, relatively speaking, luckily though, about the fact that, like I said before, there's only one badge left throughout the majority of the game, and in addition to that, no star pieces needs to be found rather, in this entire chapter. And relatively speaking, I've noticed they're also trying to bring us to forms of some good items here now as well. Specifically though, not only Ultra Shrooms, but in addition to Jamming Jelly as well. So I do also realize about the fact that there's another method you can able to actually also get Ultra Shrooms or Jamming Jelly as well, which we'll discuss more about that until next week, because aside from all that stuff, that was about the fact that still, I can't even believe we actually getting very close towards the end of this game, basically. Apart from, you know, more cooking to sort out, but again, we'll try to save that for later. So for now, there's going to be some more battles coming up. So for the time being, though, we have to deal with the forms of not one, but three Koopa trolls, but in addition to, well, Magic Koopa. Now, you're probably thinking, so, have we technically already managed able to deal with the forms of that Magic Koopa already? Well, that's true, especially noticeable for after trying to learn the forms of the actual action commands. Well, this time, about the fact that we actually have a rematch against with the forms of the blue Magic Koopa. Although the noticeable difference is this time, he now actually has more HP, and so much to the point, his HP was actually 11 this time, and 6 attack power and 0 defense power. So because of that though, yeah, that's as far as we can able to say in terms of the forms of that particular enemy rematch. So, although then again though, I do apologize about the fact that my commentary wasn't the best in the world. I mean, let's face it though, it's about the fact that, like I said before, we are getting very, very, very close towards the end of this, basically. Because, you know, I can't even believe time flies, you know? Especially because no matter what though, it's about the fact I'm so looking forward to able to actually realize that we are about to be diving into the next Let's Play after this. So as a result though, again, I can't tell for surely just yet though, just because, again, it's going to be a super top secret, especially because, you know, that, you know, we are still going back on experiencing 2 games at a time still, so because of that though, yeah, you get the idea for this point. So anyway, let's discuss upon the forms of that particular spin-off Splatoon game I was being on about earlier. The game itself is going to be called Splatoon Raiders, which, yeah, it doesn't seem to be called Splatoon 4. So no matter what though, it's about the fact that they, at the very least, they managed able to call it a different name for the game. And like I said before, it's going to be on Switch 2 exclusive, so because of that though, and alongside with that, ever since during the informs have been yesterday, for I've managed to realize that Splatoon 3 is currently now on to version 10.0.0. Well, it's more specifically dedicated to the forms of the Switch 2 patch update, at least as far as I can recall. I mean, generally speaking, I was about the fact it has been quite a while since I actually have last mentioned something related to Splatoon stuff, and yeah, I'm very optimistic about the forms this new Splatoon game is going to be on its way, but I can't tell for sure when exactly is it going to be releasing, but time will definitely tell though, especially because obviously the next Nintendo Switch 2 game is going to be releasing next, which appears to be not only Donkey Kong Bonanza, but in addition to Super Mario Party Jamboree Nintendo Switch 2 Edition, plus Jamboree TV as well. So I might able to actually try to consider getting the physical copy of the game, just only checking out the forms of the Jamboree TV mode itself, in addition to mouse controls as well, and etc, etc. And meanwhile, we've also expected to be waiting for, you know, Kirby and the Forgotten Land Nintendo Switch 2 Edition, plus Sky Crossed World, and in addition to that though, also with the forms of Kirby Air Riders as well, and in addition to that, Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, and now we're able to expect to be waiting for Splatoon Raiders. So yeah, you get the idea for that. So anyway, and as you can tell, this place is so generous when it comes to more specifically trying to get ourselves some more life shrooms, because as far as I'm aware, this is where about the fact that, like I said before, the game is about to get increasingly difficult once we do come across into ourselves some tougher enemy encounters and tougher bosses as well. But either way, there's the final badge in the game, which appears to be the 3rd variant of Defocus, which Obviously, it's the same thing as the other two, so there's no point for able to mention about that. So as you can tell, we've gathered every single badges in the game, so that's very top-notch, all things considered. So we didn't miss one of them though, which is obviously a good thing, because otherwise, if we did manage to able to actually miss out on the last badge in the game, I'm like, oh, jeez, I found it very unbelievable when if I do ended up missing the forms of that particular badge, that's pretty missable in some scenarios, which I haven't really tested out for myself, you see. Well, that's mainly because I'm more into the forms of full completionist for some games, except with, you know, Paper Mario Sticker Star, because, my goodness, completionist in that game is far more tedious than it needed it to be. So, but anyway, so that pretty much does it for every single badges now. So because of that though, as far as I'm aware, there's only like 80 of them in total. So as a result though, we can pretty much expect about the fact that 400% completion is going to be, I don't know, kind of worth it, I guess. Whilst unlike the defaults of how it does it on, well, let's just say the Thousand Year Door, specifically the Switch remake, at the very least you get something very rewarding if you do manage to able to completely done every single aspect of that particular version of the game. So, but that'll be a discussion for a later time. So anyway, also what I found is a little bit odd about this is though, is that during the informs of the actual Nintendo Switch 2 itself, there's a technically about the fact that you can able to actually play one of those Joy-Con controllers. Likely, for instance though, I did somehow discover something just recently that basically though, if you're trying to able to actually connect either the left Joy-Con 2 or right Joy-Con 2 as an individual sides of these Joy-Con 2s, basically though, there's actually a possibility you can able to actually do a combination of both Joy-Con 2 and Joy-Con 1 all in one particular hand grip. And I'm like, okay, I never noticed that was a thing until recently that eventually became true, which I'm like, okay, that's very odd, especially considering for the fact that the actual control layout is pretty much exactly the same, minus the forms of the lack of the chat button and stuff like that, which, yeah, that's actually very interesting to say the least, especially considering for the fact that despite you still can't slide down the actual Joy-Con 1 controllers onto your actual Switch 2, because, you know, Switch 2 now allows players to able to actually use the magnets for attaching the actual Joy-Con 2 controllers. So, at least to be more specifically, if you're trying to play the game on handheld mode at the very least. So, yeah, that's actually kind of interesting. So, and speaking of the forms of Nintendo Switch 2, what I also do realize is that the Nintendo Switch 2 actually became the fastest selling Nintendo system in UK history right now, which I'm like, well, that's generally surprising, especially considering for the fact that despite the actual price tag is so ridiculously stingy to me though, but regardless of such though, is about the fact that we are still very, very happy that we somehow now finally got the Switch 2 at the very least. So, and aside from all that stuff though, there is no way in heck I'm probably not going to get the portable Xbox device, because as far as I'm aware, that there's a lack of physical media, and in addition to that though, is about the fact that at this point in time, I'm basically almost running out of space for my room for its decoration department. So, oh, talking of which though actually, I was originally trying to able to actually place my Nintendo Switch 2 Pro controller during the forms of that particular, let's just say that as you probably already expect, that I've already got myself the forms of the Shadow the Hedgehog controller holder, which I did manage to able to test out with my Switch 2 Pro controller, and it's not balanced enough. So instead, I obviously attempt to give Shadow the Switch 1 Pro controller, and I give the Switch 2 Pro controller back to Sonic the Hedgehog controller holder, because at the very least though, about the fact that it did manage to balance out very nicely, especially considering for the fact that, you know, both Sonic and Shadow are very cool indeed. I mean, I really do wish about the fact that if Silver the Hedgehog were able to actually deserve to have the controller holder. I mean, time will definitely tell though, mainly by next year if we're able to try to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Silver the Hedgehog's character existence or something like that, since in Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, alongside with the forms of Sonic Rivals for the PSP, but again, we'll have to wait and see what happens in due time. So anyway, so as you can see, we've now come across into the forms of the cavern section, which, much like the forms of how it does it on well, some other aspects in Journey Evolves within Darker Rooms. Specifically, you know, with the evolves of that particular toy box thing on, you know, Shy Guy's toy box, as soon as we're able to try to fight against with the Latin Ghost, and in addition to go inside the whale. And not only that though, trying to able to explore into the actual cavern section in the jungle to try to find one of those Yoshi's kits. Well, we have to do that again, except this time we need to follow the correct path. And now obviously though, if you ended up in the wrong path, it will pretty much lead us to a dead end. So we have to able to try to make our way to the correct path. Like, for instance, though, we're now on to the final part of this particular section right there. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, if you dare fall off, I'm pretty sure this will lead us to the actual progression. But, if we go back, and then if you're trying to able to actually jump over the actual edge, and obviously, though, what happens was, I believe that will pretty much lead us to the dead end. So, because of that, though, definitely not recommendable if you're trying to do this way, because otherwise though, it not only contains nothing, but also there's a dead end. So, yes, one classify that. So, anyway, so as far as I'm aware, I would have liked able to explain more, but it's just about the fact that at this point in time, that I'm seriously still really expecting to believe that it's kind of odd for me to say this about the fact that there's still no sign of the actual Nintendo Direct yet. I mean, true, no matter what though, it has been about, you know, 2 months ago since the Nintendo Switch 2 Nintendo Direct. I mean, truth be told though, it's about the fact that we've already got loads of stuff coming up for Nintendo Switch 2, which I guess that's pretty obvious of why they're probably not going to do the actual Nintendo Direct just yet though. But like I said before, time will definitely tell for sure. But as you can see, we somehow made our way back to that familiar room ever since whenever we managed able to actually open up the door and stuff like that. So now, about the fact that we can now able to actually progress after going for this entire obstacle, filled to the brim with a lot of enemies, and in addition to, you know, darkness, cavern rooms, and yeah, everything else will become to expect, basically. So anyway, so let's go ahead and continue things on here, and if we go on to this particular hallway with the those staircases and stuff like that, and sometimes though we might able to actually come across into even more Koopa Patrol right there, like usually one of them right there, because as far as I'm aware, luckily there are some rest areas here and there, so that way we can able to quite frequently try to able to not only restore our HP, but in addition to flower points, and in addition to our star energy as well. Because, well, that way, every time whenever we do manage to battle against with even much more tougher enemies, then that'll be a perfect opportunity to able to actually just try to rest for a while until we're able to actually restore our HP, flower points, and, of course, star energy. So, either way, now I'm pretty sure about the fact that when it comes to the majority of Chapter 8, as far as I'm aware, that I believe we might come across into ourselves not 1, but 3 rest-ups during the Evolves within Chapter 8. So it's almost like a refreshing checkpoint kind of way, but either way, I know for a fact it has been about a couple of hours since I actually have last played this for sure. But anyway, so let's go and rest up and try to able to restore our HP as we expected, so that way we can able to do just that. So we can able to actually just have a nice little snooze without any blankets whatsoever. So unlike the Falls of some stops, in addition to Toad Town itself as well, at the very least we do able to have a blanket for ourselves, so... But anyway, so as far as I'm aware, about the fact that no matter what though, I suppose I want to bring this up for a moment, is that you noticed about the fact that one of those enemies in particular that we technically already come across into ourselves in the actual cavern section, well, I'm afraid to tell you about the fact that we can't able to actually tunnel that enemy yet, because relatively speaking though, much like the Fonz of how it does in one of those mini-bosses just before Chapter 5, we can't tunnel anything while it's in darkness. So because of that though, we have to let the actual enemies go visibly seeable, and you get the idea for this point. So anyway, and in here though, we can able to come across into ourselves, let's just say, the final item shop in the game, and my goodness, some items are pretty expensive. So because of that though, there was no way in heck I could not afford to able to actually spend on the expensive stuff, because, you know, we've already gathered every single badges, and in addition to star pieces as well. I mean, the only thing we need to do next is, of course, cooking stuff, but then again, that's not going to be until for later on, that is. So, oh, now it's possible we can now able to tackle that enemy over there, right at the middle. So hopefully we can able to actually try to tackle that enemy for reals. So anyway, let's see what this enemy was, the enemy itself is actually called. So again, I do apologize for that particular tongue twist in the end there, but either way, this enemy right here was actually called Bony Beetle, which essentially speaking of, is basically it's like Buzzy Beetles, except it's almost like a shape like a skull kind of look to it. So basically though, Bony Beetle does have 8 HP, and attack power is 3, and also defense power is 4. However, as you can definitely tell, basically though, according to what Goon Mario said earlier, that if he does manage able to bring spikes out, this means that about the fact that his attack power will increase, meaning about the fact that his attack power will be 5. So as a result, yeah, that's what happens right there, as you can see. And sometimes there are a few occasional moments where Magic Koopa likes able to actually heal anyone else's health. Like, for instance, though, as you can tell, that he did somehow manage able to restore 5 HP for Bony Beetle. But let's not get ahead of ourselves to this point right now, because thankfully, with the forms of the Star Storm, Star Spirit power, then we can essentially try to deal with those guys no problem. So, and I would have liked to. Oh, come on! I always get hit every single point worth noting for. I mean, that's just very unpredictable at times. So, anyway, let's go ahead and finish these guys off, no matter what. So, I mean, then again, though, the actual process might take a bit while to able to actually make our way towards the very end of this entire chapter, but still, no matter what, though, like I said before, we're only going to be focusing on 90% of this entire chapter, not in the actual 100% formula, until specifically later on, like I said. So anyway, let's go and bring out the powerful bomb, or the power bomb, I should say, to able to actually finish those guys off within a total breeze. So, nicely done there. But of course, we still haven't got any of those star points until whenever we come across into ourselves Hammer Bros again, and in addition to other enemies here and there as well. So anyway, for the time being though, let's just head back for a little bit and try to able to actually save our game, and also try to able to restore our not only HP, but in addition to flower points as well, and of course star energy before we're able to actually battle some more enemies and stuff like that. I mean, I would have liked able to equip the first attack badge, or the spin attack badge, or even bump attack if you will. But let's just say, once we make our way to the final level up in the game, which is of course level 27, that way it'll be a perfect opportunity for us to able to actually not to go through every single battles anymore, if we manage able to reach our maximum level cap. So, again, once again, I do apologize for that particular tongue twist in the end, folks, but either way, I kind of believe it's finally time to able to actually almost try to finish up the game for reals. So, I mean, you have no idea, it's been so long since we finally managed to get into the actual story progression. So, anyway, with that being said, folks, is that we got endings of this point right here. So join me next time for some more of Let's Play of Paper Mario for the Nintendo 64. Is that we are still about to be exploring to the forms of some more rooms in Bowser's Castle. So I'll see you guys until on Monday. Later, fellas.